I welcome you to Issues at Hand here on Church of Uganda Family TV. Good morning, family. And Issues at Hand is brought to you by Protea Hotel by Marriott Entebbe for all your wedding reception, birthday parties, graduation, conferences, but also you can as well go there and have that best accommodation you can ever find. Edwin Austin Mukalazi is my name. So, as we said earlier, today is World NGOs Day. And very many of us have a misconception when it comes to NGOs. So, by the end of this discussion, I believe our brains will have been washed the right way. We shall get to the role of NGOs in community transformation. That is our topic. We want to see the basic role of NGOs in community transformation. Of course, we've talked about the Batwa who are decreeing discrimination, and if any transformation needs to take place, how can the NGOs come in? With us is the one Mr. Wataga Emmanuel Fred, who is the head of programs, Uganda Reach the Aged Association. Sir, you're most welcome.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ukalazi.
We are delighted to have you this morning.
I'm happy to also be here at this establishment, and thank you so much for hosting us. Yeah.
So we understand that non-government organizations are a vital part of the global community, providing services and support to those in need. Now, help us understand what the broad term non-government organizations mean, because we see there are very many NGOs, but there is also another term called CBOs. So these are terms that people keep on confusing. So some people don't differentiate between an NGO and a CBO.
Okay, non-government organizations are organizations that work to support or to complement the work of government. And most of non-government organizations work at the national level. But we also have two types. We have the ones which work at national level within a country. But we also have those that work at national level but also at global level, like international organizations. Those are also non-government organizations.
Okay.
And they are all registered with the National Bureau, the National NGO Bureau. And some of them register themselves as organizations that are limited by guarantee. But CBOs, community-based organizations, most of them work at community level or at district level. The highest level they can work is at district level.
Okay.
And they also register with the offices of the community development officer at that level. So their work most times will be, like, for example, they'll be working at Jinja level, at Kampala level. And some of them usually will find they're working within particular sub-counties within that particular district. So their work sometimes might not go beyond that district. But with the time, some of them develop to grow and start now working at national level. And that requires them now to register as non-government organizations or now organizations that are working at national level or beyond that particular district. So that's the distinction.
So how do I know?
Though, though still even the NGOs also support communities. But communities up to the national level, from the lowest level to up to the national level. Yes.
Then how do I know that this particular organization is a CBO or an NGO before they have given me their letters of their license or operation documents?
It might not be easy, but most times you'll find that it's after you've had that interaction with them. That's when you'll ask them, okay, you're doing this work, but how far, what is your coverage? And once they explain their coverage, that for us work within this district, then it has gone to that level. Yes. And then when they tell you, for us we have the mandate to work nationally, then. But also from the certificate, most times their certificates are usually from the CBOs, it's at the district level. and it's given by the community development officer the office of the community development officer is the one who gives them that, and so they cannot sometimes go or surpass that mandate.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what happens if I have a license of a CBO, but I keep on operating as an NGO? For instance, my license is supposed to operate within maybe Mukono district, and I stretch to even Wakiso and PG, those neighboring districts.
Unfortunately, those scenarios are there, but I think sometimes is where people forget their mandate, or where where organizations forget, they want to do it all, to become a jack of all trades. But it would be good and advisable that you go and register. If you want to go beyond your district, register bigger than that.
Okay.
Yeah. Otherwise, you put yourself in a very dangerous situation. Remember, by the time you're getting this certificate from the district or from the national level, you've kind of signed an MOU that I'm now going to be able to work beyond. But now, if anything happens in the unfortunate, that whatever you're doing in a particular district and you do not have a mandate to work there, then you're in trouble with the government. Yeah.
So what happens also if I've been operating, let's say in Mukono, and then maybe circumstances hit me and I'm forced to relocate to Buyukwe? Do I still need to get a license do I need to register at Buyukwe district, or I still maintain this license that I had from Mukono?
No, it is advisable that you also go and register with Buyukwe. If you have moved from that district, there's no problem, by the way, in having what we call MOUs with the different districts, and even registering with them. There's no problem. You can have as many as possible. But that starts telling you that why don't you then just move to become an NGO? It's okay. The requirements that you need to provide at NGO might be slightly different from the ones you give at district level. Because at the NGO level, you have to provide an audit report, you provide an annual report, your strategic plan. But at the community level, most times you're going to provide just your annual report and probably a statement of financial. How are you standing? Your budget, the annual budget. So it's usually just a small disconnect. It's just a few things that you need to add in.
Okay.
So it would be advisable that when you want to move to an NGO, then just get the requirements from the NGO bureau. They're always online, and sometimes, why I'm saying they're online is because sometimes they change. Most recently, we've been asked to have an ownership kind of certificate. There's that requirement. Yeah.
Okay. So, the last about this, we've seen very many organizations register as NGOs, register as non-profit organizations. Why are they non-profit organizations?
It comes from the sources, first of all, where they get the money.
Okay.
Most of the organizations, or whether, let me call them all CSOs, civil society organizations, because they're composed of all the CBOs, the faith-based organizations, the non-government, the NGOs, some are academia. Now, that whole, when you're getting money from a donor, somebody who is giving it to you freely, it would be good that you are going to provide services at no cost, because somebody has given you that money. And that's why we call you're supposed to be non-profit, that whatever work you're going to do, you're not going to charge a fee. You're not for example, you're going to, let's say, build water points for people. It should be for free. It's only National Water and Sewage Corporation that is going to build those water points, but you have to pay a bill. Because for them, they have to make a profit, they have people to pay. But most times, when the money is coming for you to, let's say, develop, to build a water point in a community, the salaries have already been paid by somebody else, or that donor. So that's why you're supposed to provide this work as a free service.
Okay.
But there are also organizations these days are moving into what we call social entrepreneurship, whereby you get some money from donors, but because the donor environment now is shrinking, that you find there are fewer donors now supporting. You find that sometimes you have a lot of costs to bear as an organization, and so there are services you might now want to provide at a fee. But always ensure that even when you're providing at a fee, the biggest percentage should be for free. I'll give you an example, like Uganda Rich Village Association, where I come from. We are having what we call a health and wellness center. Now, the health and wellness center is supposed to provide physiotherapy support, health advice to older people, because we work with older people. But we also have a cross section of older persons who have some money. So we have days when most of the days are for free services. And then we have days when they can come and pay. They come and pay. Mostly what they are paying is for their food, for that extra treatment. But it's a small, and now that's the same one again we plug back to support the ones who are not paying. So that component is there. But that one you always have to be very clear about it before the NGO.
Okay.
Yeah, the NGO bureau.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, we talk about this day, which is the World NGOs Day. What is this day all about, and how important is it that we have it celebrated?
Yeah, the importance of this day is that first, the contribution of NGOs is being recognized. That NGOs also have a part they play in this, in not just this country but in the world. That we have the government and it does its work.
Okay.
But NGOs come in to complement that work. Most times NGOs are coming in to provide, like, to bring to the light of the world issues of the human rights of particular people. And let me be able to be clear that as per the laws of that country, not every what you consider human right is human right. Yes, as per the law. For example, you're fighting for the rights. Most times you have what we call the special interest groups or vulnerable groups.
Yes.
In this country, they're categorized as we have the women, we have the youth, we have the children, we have the persons with disability, we have the older persons, we also have the workers now, and many others. So all those have a particular right, and most of their rights are usually not so different from each other. If I could just a little bit look at it, they have rights less in line, let's say, with the basic needs. For example, children have a right of basic needs, and when we talk about basic needs, that the child has a right to be given food, shelter, clothing, medical care. It's the same all through. All these people also have that right. There's a right of protection, that they protect from all harmful things. I can elaborate about rights, but that's one area that they come in to remind the government. The government does a very good work of legislating and coming up with the policies. Which policies spell out what are these rights? But NGOs come in to complement in terms of supporting where the government cannot be able to provide. They are the watchdogs, if I may use that word, watchdog, that they see where are the service gaps. You've said you're going to provide a road in a particular district. The government has released money to that particular district to build the roads. Are those roads really, do they come to pass? Are they built? So NGOs come in to look into that did you build the road? Did you build it to the standard that is required? You're building a building, for example, like this building. Does this building conform to the rights of this, for example, person with disability? Can they access? You're building a health center. That health center, is it providing services to all? For example, when our older people go to the health centers for services, how are they treated? Do you treat them the same way you treat a person, let's say a mother who is pregnant? Are you treating them the way you would treat children? An older person comes to hospital and says, I have a headache, I have a backache. And many of the hospitals, you'll find the health workers are asking, if I may use Uganda, that mukade, obo bukade. Now, somebody has told you he has a headache, he has a backache. Look at the scenario. If it was a youth who came and said, I have a headache, I have a backache, how would they treat them? They would treat that particular sickness, not treating not saying, it is your youth that is disturbing you. No. So, NGOs come in to mostly complement the work of the government. So there was need to recognize that. And that's why we have this day on 27th of every year, that we recognize the role of NGOs, that they provide complementary work towards the government, because government sometimes might not be able to fund it all. They might not be able to be everywhere. And you know, it's like what you said, that you cannot ask a monkey to judge a case of a forest. You are the ones providing these services. Again, we are asking you, how are you doing? Definitely I'll give myself 100%.
True.
So NGOs have to come in to check that, open your eyes in a very friendly way to help you to know that, okay, you've provided this service, but there's a gap here. How do we fill this gap? Do you have the resources? If you have the resources, bridge that gap. If you don't have the resources, can we bring in our resources and we bridge that? Okay. It's basically that. Yeah.
So in as a way of reminding the government or standing with the government in service delivery, sometimes NGOs are taken to be groups that oppose sometimes the government, that is alleged that they oppose the government, or they support small groups that are anti-government. We've seen reports of terrorists being supported by particular NGOs that the NGO board has come up to, the NGO bureau has come up to bring on board, and you know, sometimes these NGOs come in to support leaders on the opposition. Yeah, so is this really the way NGOs should function?
Now, that's where we have a problem. When you register yourself, be clear what are you going to stand for.
Okay.
NGOs are not supposed to be partisan. You're supposed to be non-partisan, meaning that you're not supposed to say that I'm an NGO and I'm supporting this party or that party. Once you're working in an NGO, whatever political aspirations you have, you keep them at bay. You keep them to yourself. You enter an office, you're doing this work, be objective. Don't just bring out that kind of, unless your definition is that. And the laws are there. That I'm coming out, I'll talk about my organization. Uganda Rich Age Association is a membership organization of older person associations and individuals who have a heart for older persons. Now, my main role is going to be policy advocacy for older persons, support socioeconomic development for older persons, support different things. Now, I go beyond that, and I'm saying, okay, now I'm supporting older persons, and I'm going to support only the Muslims. Now, older persons cut across. They are Muslims, they are all kinds of. Now, they already are becoming now religious again. So you have to stand for what you're supposed to do. The problem comes where you go beyond your mandate. The problem comes where you're trying to oppose what you actually said you're going to do. The laws are there in the country, and we all send our MPs to go and legislate on this. And once what is passed for that country is what stands, like, let's say, we are not going to support this particular group. That's it. That's what the government has come up with. And we have to work within the confines of that. So where we usually get a problem is where you bring out that aspect of that, now I'm partisan. And that's where you'll be working, or you'll be going against the government.
So in registration, do you clearly confess that you're partisan, or people just change when they are given licenses of operation?
The license of operation is what should actually govern you. But yes, we are aware that there are people who go beyond that. And that's where the problem comes in. Once you're funding also things like, now we've spoken about terrorism. Terrorism is a crime. And so if you're funding terrorism, you're already going against the government, which you are claiming that you are going to support. Or which you claim that you're going to complement the work. So what are you complementing? Are you trying to make the army busy? So in my view, NGOs, you need to stand by what you professed to be. If you don't want that, then come out clearly. And that's why I love that when you want to stand for, let's say, MPship, and you're working for a government entity or an NGO, you have to resign. Then go to do that. You clearly define that I'm no longer this, I'm now going for this. Yes.
Okay. So now we look at the role of NGOs in community transformation, because you've told that one of the things that NGOs do is to support the government, to lend a hand to the government as in service delivery. So we are looking at the role and how do NGOs now come to help out in delivering service delivery, starting with the NGO you come from, which is Uganda Reach, the Aid Association.
Okay, I'll probably so much talk around the NGO I represent.
Yes.
As I mentioned, that we work for and with older persons. Now, older persons first are those who are defined as 60 years and above, and there are different kinds. Okay, we have obviously we have men and women, but while we're working with the older persons, we also work with those under their care, because you'll find that 60% of persons who, okay, let me call it 60% of vulnerable persons are actually under the care of older persons. When you talk about a disabled child or a child living with disability in a home, they are usually left under the care of the older person. When you talk about a person that is infected with HIV/AIDS, they are usually put to the older persons. Now, coming to that, as our role, yes, we have a Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, where actually most of these vulnerable persons are supported from. But the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development has different departments, and those, which departments now represent this: the women, the youth, the person with disability, and also workers. For us, we fall in the Disability and Elderly Department of the ministry, which has a commissioner there. And in that department, for the older persons specifically, the government is providing a number of services for them. We have the most popular one, the Social Assistance Grant for Empowerment, which is given to our older persons countrywide, 80 years and above. But we also have most recently the Social Enterprise, SEGOP, Socio-Economic, let me just SEGOP. Socio-economic grant for older persons. Okay. It's coming on board. Now, all these are to support older persons to live in their community. Now, our role as NGO is one, we were part of the legislation of this, to have the different, right now in the country we have what we call the National Policy for Older Persons, which came in 2009, and it has been reviewed. A new one will be coming on board. We also have the National Council for Older Persons Act. Now that act was spelling out, because for the first time now we have older person leaders from the parish level to the national level, even MPs now. Now, we as NGOs, we were part and parcel of the legislation to come up with these policies as this organization. So ours was to bring out the outsider's eye, that yes, we want now to support older persons. What are we seeing? Because for us, we are more on ground. Every district, yes, has community development officers, but they are not usually, because of limited resources, they are not able to go to the lowest level. But as NGOs, because for us, we work with older person groups or associations, which are on ground, which actually feel this pinch of the pain of being the older person. So we get this information, and together we came and worked with the government to come up with the policies. So one of the role was policy advocacy and policy legislation together with the government. The other role is the government is providing the social assistance grant for empowerment. And when they're providing it, obviously need to mobilize people. As NGOs, we also support in the mobilization of these people to come to the relevant centers where they're supposed to get this money. We also help in the, what I mentioned, the watchdog part, to see are all older persons getting. Just to start with, let's say the 80 years and above. How many 80 years older are in the different districts? Because like my organization is an NGO which is allowed to work in the whole country. And we have a presence or members in up to 80 districts. But we are still moving. 80 districts, the original ones, some have been carved. Now, through our associations, we are able to monitor, are all 80 years older persons working? Getting these services. We have gaps sometimes that there are those who are not registered. They don't have IDs. And for you to get this money, you should have an ID. So what do? We work together with the government, together with the national, the NIRA. NIRA is the national, NIRA, it's the one that gives IDs.
National
to see that
Registration Authority.
To see that the older persons are getting their IDs. Because once they get the IDs, then they can be able to access this support of the social assistance grant for empowerment. So that's also another role we play. We also play a role of supporting them now, to train them to how do you utilize this money. You've gotten this money, or even the Sego which is about to come. They work as groups. We teach them on how they can start small income generating activities, so that when you get the money, it's not just idle. Because once you get money and it's idle, it will force you to do things which you did not plan to do. That's when we find people going now deep into alcoholism. But now, when the money comes, because now this money is every group of about 5 is supposed to get 5 million. Now when they get 5 million, they can start businesses to keep them busy, because we have older persons who can still keep busy. And the SEGOP actually is going to support 60 years to 79 years. These ones are a bit active. They are still active. They are active age. They have what we call active aging, that they can engage in business. So they utilize this money to do that. So one of the other role we do is to train them in the village savings and loan associations. Some people call them community managed microfinance groups, the saving groups. So, but also we provide what we call psychosocial support. When they have groups, they come and have psychosocial support to each other. For example, I'm sick, I have diabetes. How are you managing it? And those groups help them to live longer. Other than, many of our older pastors, what kills them is the isolation. He or she is in the village alone. Even if he has these grandchildren, there's a lot of demands. Yeah. Remember, they are no longer in active income. So you find that kind of isolation also kills them. It makes, if somebody is sick and they are alone, they die faster. Now, we provide them opportunity that they can come down into groups, at least once or twice in a week, where they can just come and talk about their problems. And it gives them what we call psychosocial support in terms of they get counseling from their peers, and that can make them also live longer. So you see, that aspect, you'd have gone to, let's say, a trained counselor to counsel you. But sometimes the government doesn't have those resources to be able to provide older persons an opportunity to go to a counselor, because you have to pay to a counselor. But here it's a free service. So organizing them in those groups. The other role in the community transformation is look at when these older persons actually get this money, both the SAGE and the SEGOP, which is yet to come. The economic situation in that district or in that village usually changes, because sometimes the government comes and gives them this money after, let's say, 3 months, which comes to, let's say, 75,000. That 75,000, they'll go to shops and buy sugar, they'll go and buy meat. Even the butcher or the woman who sells sugar in the community, they get that economic transformation because somebody has come to pay. If they had debts, they are now going to come and pay. So, what we are looking as NGOs, we come in now to, because at the moment now, the other thing we are doing, and what most NGOs actually stand for, is lobby and advocacy for the specific groups that they are representing. And in lobby and advocacy is where we come to a round table discussion and say, these people have this kind of right, and this right also, they also have these needs. How can we provide them? And we look at budgets. For example, we most recently now, what the things that we've been doing aggressively is around training older person leaders to do 3 things. One, to provide good leadership, because there's leadership all over, but we found that leadership sometimes has issues. Some leaders are not doing what they're supposed to do. But older persons, we believe there are people who have been leaders before, but they can provide alternative, very transparent and very with integrity leadership, which an older person is this very secure person that even if he took a loan in district in Kampala, he already built in Kampala. He cannot run away to Chisoro like a young person. So even when it comes to their word, they have the experience of this, of what they are talking about. So they provide leadership. So we talk about governance. They also can be able to. We teach them also to engage in the monitoring itself. For example, every district has what we call budget cycles, which starts usually in November and go through until. In the budget cycle is where everyone now comes to discuss on what should be the budgets of different special interest groups, but also other social services within a district. Now, the older person also, they provide an opportunity to monitor how are these services that were promised by particular districts being delivered. And they provide it in there's no corruption with them. You cannot corrupt them. They already have the integrity to keep.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and that is also through an NGO. We have supported that. The other area that the older persons are also mostly now engaged in is in the area of what we call mind change. That one, these cultures. So they are the ones who promote culture too, because cultures are disintegrating with the time. Because some people who are born now in town no longer know their cultures back, but these older persons bring it back to them. And for us, culture has a lot of things that it supports in community. In that, we avoid the foreign things. I don't want to go into the other negative thing, you know.
Yeah.
Culturally, even how people used to marry versus how it's happening these days. Culturally, how we used to deal with our problems. Let's say there's conflicts. It saves a lot of money than, you know, going through the whole court process and what. Go to the north, they have what they call the matoput to solve very big problems. Yes. So NGOs, their role in community transformation is basically they can be able to go to the lowest level of the community where the government sometimes cannot reach because of limited resources.
So in line with the old persons that you people advocate for, we've seen very many old people struggling with evictions, and then those who have been in social service or civil service are struggling to get their pension, and some actually die before they get even their pension. So how can Uganda reach the Aged Association, or how is it helping our judges out there who are being evicted? Someone says, I've been on this land since 1949 and now they are evicting me, telling me I own this land illegally. So how are you helping them?
Okay, and I'll go just specific to some of the projects we have run. You know, the most volatile place before 2017 was Hoima, with the oil exploration.
Yes.
And so what happened was that the government wanted to have pipelines to pass, but also where the oil rigs were found, people used to own that land. So that land had to be taken, because the government is the one which takes a responsibility of looking after the resources, especially minerals. So that land had to be bought from these older people. We had a group of people who were like speculators. Some of them knew already that this land is, there's going to be oil around here. Some people would come and threaten the older people to leave the land, or they want to buy it at a lower cost. We also have scenarios of where young people, after, let's say, the government now came out and said, okay, we want this land. They say, okay, now what we're going to do is you have to locate from this land, we give you a home, or we give you money to go and buy it somewhere else. And the young people, or they say the relatives, sometimes they are grandchildren, sometimes it's the sons of these old people, they can't tell me, no, old woman, you let me open an account, the money will pass through my thing, and then I'll give it to you. So many of our older people lost their land like that because of those kinds of conflicts.
And actually, at that very point, let's take a short commercial break. And when we return, we are going to look at what you have done to help the old people.
Yes.
The role of NGOs in community transformation, because as we know, today is the World NGOs Day, and it is important that we discuss about NGOs and their role in transformation, because they are vital, or they play a vital part in global community, providing services and supporting those in need. So we are delighted to have Mr. Wataga Emmanuel Fred, who is the head of programs from Uganda Reach the Aged Association. And before the break, we are looking at how Uganda Reach the Aged Association is helping the old persons who are being evicted from land, and then the others who were civil servants that have retired, but they find hardship to get their pension. Mr. Wede, we are back, and you were telling us what Uganda Reach the Aged Association is doing to help out on the old persons that are going through such challenges?
Yeah. So going to the land question, and actually because the biggest source that older persons own is the land.
Yes.
And they are the ones later on who transfer it to others.
Sure.
In particularly in Hoima, we had a project where we trained what we call paralegal advisors. These were older persons themselves who we provided them basic legal knowledge, especially land-related knowledge. And these people are usually were coming the same villages with the older persons who are affected. So they would provide that service in terms of where you find an older person is having a case of eviction, they'll go, they'll provide they'll be the ones to give testimonies that this person owns the land, but they are also the ones who would follow up with the relevant other institutions of government. We talk about the Human Rights Commission in those districts. We'll talk about the justice centers to be able to help represent these older persons in court. As an organization, for us, we don't yet have that legal arm. So we work with other organizations. And once we've been working with these human rights and the justice centers. These ones always provide what we call pro bono services. But also, most recently, through our National Council for Older Persons, they have an MOU with the Uganda Law Society that an older person, not only a land case now, but all cases, an older person can be represented by a lawyer. Because every lawyer always has actually a mandate of every year you have to provide at least some pro bono services, services that are at zero cost. So that's how our older persons can get services. And we are happy that because of that project, we had scenarios of land grabbing from older persons minimized. There are a few pockets of older cases where some older persons lost their land because it's their sons who got the money, and instead of giving it back to the older people, they went probably into Hoima or even left the district, went and remarried, squandered the money, and came back when they were poor, just like the prodigal son. So those scenarios have been there. But the other role which also we played, and which actually NGOs are supposed to play, is usually around sensitizing the communities. We provided sensitization that this and that is happening. And the government was so good to give timelines that we are going to bring a pipeline. At this period, you should have been compensated. At this period, you should either, if you chose to go and to the buildings we built for you, or homes built for you, you can go and stay there. Or by this time, you should have your money and be able to get your own land. So those timelines, we would also raise awareness. The other group of people we trained were what we call the older citizen monitoring group members. And just from the word of monitoring, these were older persons who also went to monitor that, yes, the government said that they are going to, let's say, pay Mr. Vyaruhanga. Did they pay him in time? Did they pay him what was what he deserves? This is giving somebody money which they cannot even do anything with it. Did they give him what he deserves? So there's that group which also monitored that. Then they're also monitoring, have they finally also left the land which they have now sold to the government and moved to the right place? And they also follow up, how is their life thereafter? So that was also being done. But I will say that this problem is still around with us. Yes. We had now an explosion in Mubende, in Kayunga, many places. Land is a big challenge. And so for older persons, we are telling them, even out there, just go to the nearest Human Rights Commission office, go to the nearest Justice Center office, nearest Uganda Law Society branch. You'll always get these services.
Okay. Pro bono services?
Pro bono services.
Okay.
The lawyers are there, they will provide you. There's that MOU which was signed between our National Council for Older Persons and the Law Society to provide that service. Then the other issue was about pension. First of all, pension and NSSF, I might not be exact with the figures, but we have very few older persons who are actually covered by it. It could come to probably 20% of the population of older persons are the ones who actually can graduate to get that. The challenge that we found out, and we have an opportunity that we've been working with the public service, with the ministry, to know why are these problems. The problems are, yes, we have staff in this particular ministries or people who are who don't want to give a good service. There are those kind of, I might call them just people who are corrupt. There is that pocket. There are always very few. But we also have challenges that there are some older persons who actually under-declared their age. You say that when you joined, you might have been actually 30 years, but you say you're 25. Now, when the exact time comes, you actually celebrate a birthday of 60 years, but the reports say that you are 55. So there's also a problem. We also have the other problem related to when they are registering IDs. Yes. There are some people who ID, when they are registering them, like me, I'll tell you, for example, right now, me, if I asked you my age, I am 45, I'm going 46 years. But if I went and the person who was registering me doesn't take it serious, he might give me a lesser year. Because I don't look like it.
Exactly.
So we have the scenarios where our older persons were given less age. And so when the time comes to mature, he's not that age. So it's a complicated issue, but it's always good if you can follow with the right office. Okay. And these days they have made it easier that you can follow up at district level. If you worked in a particular district, follow up from that district. The cow can give you a letter and things become simpler. Okay. And I saw it also most recently when there was the midterm, when they were giving the midterm, the NSSF was giving. Yes. And there were people who came and they were told, you're younger than 45, but they were actually even more because of that under declaring. It's not, sometimes the majority of the case is with women because they always want to, but even we've seen cases of men under declaring their age. Okay. Yeah.
So, in about 3 or 4 minutes, are there any challenges that NGOs find or face in executing their duties and their mandate?
Yes, the biggest, as I said, most of these NGOs, I could say up to 90% they depend on donors. So if there's a donor wave, like either the donor is not happy or they have had controversial issues, like I'll give an example. When they hear there's a lot of corruption in Uganda, some donors don't trust us now. They think that corruption is in every. So that also has cut money from many organizations, and so they cannot be able to do their work as they should have wanted to do. And I'll be actually categorical, very clear. When it comes also to the area of like older person, it's not an area that many donors want to support. There's a belief that older persons already have it all. Older persons have the money, so why should we support them? And also, what would be the impact? Because they look at what's the population of older person. Currently, according to the UBOS, we are about 1.66 million is the population of older person. Compared to the youth, the donors would want more to fund the youth than, because it gives them numbers. So, the issue of funding also affects many organizations' work. The other one is related to, yes, the corruption, which is also among some of our organizations. I'll tell you this, that I might not know the statistics of you, but I'll give an example. In 2014, I happened to be in Ginger, and we used to have what would come together as organizations, NGOs. The community development officer who actually registers organizations, and also who are, by the even NGOs later, you also have to get a letter from the district. So the district will also know about your operation, even as much as you're working at national level. So there was a report that there were 300 NGOs in that district. But actually the ones which were very active were about 30. You get it? So we have so many people registering as NGOs and CBOs and all that. But how many are actively doing this work? Now that also many times brings a problem that there are those who have already abused the fact that they'll go come up with a small organization or CBO, they get money from a particular donor out there, and then they don't do what they're supposed to do. Now that also has brought a problem that many donors also are not supporting us because they think that you could be doing such. But the good thing right now is many of the organizations do what we call a due diligence. They have to come on ground, they have to check what you're talking about. Are you actually doing it? Are you having a location? All that. Now, the other challenge that we have is usually something we mentioned earlier, that some people move off from the mandate they registered to engage in.
What makes people move from the mandate that they registered?
I think it's related to money.
Okay.
That you shift with the donor. Many times I think people, it's that kind of shift. You are working with the children. It's okay, you know, every time we have what we call a strategic plan. Strategic plans normally are supposed to run for about 5 years. It's okay after 5 years for you to change, but you don't change within the 5 years. It brings some confusion. So we also have a challenge of that kind of competition that are now coming. You'll find a children's home here, children's home there, children's home. Yet it becomes like a business. Now that also brings it poses a challenge in that the genuine organizations get to be confused with the non-genuine ones, because from the word NGO, there's the genuine non-government organizations, and then there are the non-genuine, the ones which are
non-genuine non-government organizations.
So that's also another big challenge that we have. The other challenge is I think I've kind of touched the issue of service delivery, especially where you're supposed to do the oversight role of monitoring work, but again you end up compromising with the officials. You're supposed to follow up, let's say, a case of land grabbing, but again you connive with the culprits. That also is making many people not now start believing in our NGOs. But the biggest challenge, as I mentioned, is related so much to resources.
Okay.
With resources, many organizations can do a bigger job.
Okay. So as we wind up, what are your parting shots when it comes to this day, the reflections of this day as the World NGOs Day, and the role of NGOs in community transformation?
Okay. So it goes back to why we are NGOs. NGOs were there to conduct mobilization of the communities. We are there to provide sensitization. We are there to consult with the communities on what are their felt needs. We are there to aggregate citizen interest in terms of bring out what is their interest. Now, once we fall short of that, we are going to do a disservice to this community. It's a call to all NGOs that as we commemorate this day, let us be able to do our role of policy advocacy. Let's do our role of policy implementation. Where there's a policy, it gives you a guidance on how you're going to implement it. Don't move off that. We are the ones to set an agenda that we want this for our people. We want their rights respected. If we don't put that across, then we are going to do a disservice to this community. So it's a call to NGOs. You're doing a lot of work. You deserve to be appreciated, but do your role and do it very well, and everything will be well. The other thing, avoid so much being at loggerheads with the government, because at the end of the day, they have good things within the policies, and we sit with them to do these policies. So now why again should we be at loggerheads? And then please be different from if you're talking about anti-corruption, can you also make sure that your books are clean, you're not corrupt? Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Wataga Emmanuel Fred, and to you who has been watching us from the time we started up to now. Yeah, we've come to the end of Issues at Hand today. We meet tomorrow, but from the coffee break, we shall have the Farm Girl with Family Farm. Meet in the evening with Flourishing Hub at 9 p.m. God bless you and have a good day.